Today, Boca Raton is known for its luxury, innovation, and coastal charm. But beneath the shine is a century of transformation, from a tiny farming town in 1925 to a playground for visionaries, architects, and developers. What was this area like, 1925, 1930?
It was a railroad town. It was an agricultural area, a small town, pioneer town.
Mary Czar is executive director of the Boca Raton Historical Society. Susan Gillis is the curator.
We had farms that packed up their produce, put them on the train to go north. That was the main source of income, was farming. And they came for the climate and the soil and built a little town.
Yeah. In those days, there were 3 communities in Boca. We like to think of it that way. A white community, a black community, and a Japanese community, which is so interesting to me. Did they intermingle? Yes. A lot of our black pioneers were originally from Deerfield. And so the community of Pearl City was created in 1915, so they wouldn't have to walk so far to work on these farms. Almost everybody was an agricultural worker, but not just black citizens, but white citizens as well. And our Japanese colonists also had farms, and they all worked the farms, the kids, everybody. It was a little tiny farm town.
Just north of downtown Boca Raton lies Pearl City, the city's oldest neighborhood and its first historically black community. They seem to congregate in the Pearl City area, the workers, some of the African-American workers. Why?
Because they could own property there. They
set
could
up
own property everywhere, yes. So it was set up specifically for black citizens could own property there.
Right.
And those days of segregation, that was quite a challenge. So that's why they congregated there.
So what you're saying is that if they wanted to live anywhere else, they couldn't?
They couldn't own property. They could live. There were sharecroppers, there were tenant farmers and so on that lived various places. But Pearl City was like almost a little village. So it had its own churches, eventually its own school, little stores and so on. So it became naturally a black community, essentially.
Japanese. Why Japanese here? How did they end up being
Isn't that fascinating?
That's amazing.
Yeah. A man named Joe Sakai, who was American educated, decided to establish a village. It's called Yamato. People say Yamato, but it's really Yamato. At Yamato Road and Dixie Highway.
Was there actually a town that was called?
Yes, it was called Yamato. So interestingly, it never was more than, say, 50 people, including white and black settlers. By the 1920s, most of those settlers sold their property during the land boom and got the heck out of here because it was very rustic. Moved to New York, moved back to Japan, or what have you. We actually know some of those families. So by World War II, there were 13 people left, Japanese, 4 families.
Living in that area?
Yes, 2 families and 2 bachelors.
What do you see as the most defining moments in the city's history?
We wouldn't be here if it were not for Flagler's Railroad. So that is why we were born. And then after that, we have certain things that happened that really have helped define who we are. The first is the coming of Addison Meisner in 25.
In the 1920s, flamboyant architect Addison Meisner arrived in Boca Raton with a grand vision to build a Mediterranean-style paradise for America's elite. Backed by powerful investors, Meisner's dream reshaped the city's identity, laying the architectural foundation that still defines Boca's signature style today.
He came in 25. He was here only about 2 years.
Oh.
2 years.
2 years.
And we name everything for him.
Yes, that's right. He made a big influence, obviously had a huge influence on the city. He was a city planner when he was here. So he helped plat the city. He approved projects. He was very influential, and his whole idea for a resort community took hold in the citizenry. So his
He was
ideas.
influential.
He absolutely.
Incredibly. Well, everybody knew who he was when he came here because
Yeah.
he had basically established the Palm Beach that we
Right.
know today.
He had a huge advertising
Yes.
machine.
Yes.
And so Boca was on the
Yeah.
map.
Boca was the metaphor for the whole Florida land boom era, which is the mid-20s.
Right.
Both the success and its failure, because it went horribly bust after this hurricane of 26 and so on.
Why did he select Boca to do his city planning?
They started in Boynton. Long story short, Boynton didn't want him. So he turns a little further south to this beautiful little underdeveloped beach town that has the same amenities it still has today, and bought basically southeast Boca Raton.
But he came here because Boynton wasn't that interested in using his money or his plans.
He wanted to limit access to the beach, and for some reason the citizens did not like that
In Boynton.
in Boynton.
But here they liked him. and
Oh,
he
we
became-
liked him
Yeah,
really a lot.
Boca was
Yeah.
welcomed. him.
Very welcoming.
But after 2 years, he was gone.
The boom had gone bust.
Well, he was not alone. Everybody
That's
lost
right.
their shirts
Right.
here.
So
Everyone.
where did he go?
Back to Palm
Back
Beach.
to Palm Beach. He was still designing. He was still working. But he lost most of his money in the Boca Raton project.
Wow.
But
Okay.
yeah, he was not alone. Everybody was bankrupt.
But his plans, you say, his vision for Boca was today.
Yes, it had an airport, Spanish-style shopping centers, theaters, beautiful residential
He had
communities.
golf courses where we have golf courses
Yeah.
today. It was
Yeah.
amazing. He planned west.
Yeah.
Whoever thought about going west?
Oh,
of
yeah.
that? Nobody did.
Because
Right.
that was practically Everglades. And a big fancy hotel,
He built the Cloister Inn, which is the nucleus of the big hotel we have today.
the Boca Raton.
Mm-hmm.
So 100 years, it will be 100 years in February.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
As World War II began, Boca Raton was still a sleepy town of fewer than 700 people, mostly farmers, tradesmen, and winter visitors. But that calm would soon change, as the U.S. military eyed Boca's open land for a top-secret radar training base that would forever alter the town's future.
World War II, Boca Raton was a huge base. Talk about secret. It was a radar training base for the Air Force. You couldn't mention the word radar off campus.
Right.
Radar was a new technology, helped win the war, and average citizen didn't know what that was. Today we do. But in addition, in 1942, Operation Drumbeat was in effect, and there were German subs attacking merchant ships right off our shores, all the way up the coast, the Atlantic coast, and in the Gulf of Mexico. And because we are so close to the Gulf Stream here in this part of the world, our local citizens were eyewitnesses. They could hear and smell and see explosions of these merchant ships. The Germans were trying to stop the supply line to Europe, to our allies. So they would attack merchant ships, and flotsam and sometimes bodies from the ships would come ashore. So that's something most people have no idea, that there were German subs right offshore.
You mentioned the radar development. Who was developing? Where was that? Was there an airport here?
Where FAU and our airport are today were the runways of the Boca Raton Army Airfield. The air base was actually much bigger. It was from Palmetto Park Road on the south to north of Yamato, from Dixie or the FEC tracks to the Amtrak tracks, so think I-95. Almost 6,000 acres. There were 800 buildings. So where FAU is today were the runways of the base. As many as 15,000 men and women stationed here at one time in a town of 750 people. So naturally an economic boon to the community, amongst other things.
Where would these people, these military people who came in, where would they live?
Well, there were barracks. Originally, they lived at the hotel. The hotel was requisitioned throughout the war.
Okay.
And the families that came and followed them had to live in the town, which is
And there, yes.
not much space.
So there were two housing projects,
Yes.
federal housing projects built during the war, one for white patrons, one for black. The one for the black patrons, Dixie Manor, is still standing.
And that was a good time for the city because people meant stores, meant everything. Money.
Money.
Mhm, very economic.
In the post-war era, the
Yes.
city was able to acquire a lot of that former air base land as war surplus. Both the buildings and the land. And we're talking a big
Right.
chunk of
Huge.
acreage. So they were able to attract new businesses. So the 50s were a real boom
Okay.
again. And of course, this happened all over Florida. All the soldiers from Wisconsin and North Dakota who came here in January said, guess where I am going with my new family. So
They
this
came back.
They came back.
a new, even bigger boom in this post-war era. So that led into, of course, the 60s.
By the 60s, Boca Raton was shedding its small-town image. New neighborhoods were rising, families were moving in, and the arrival of IBM hinted at a high-tech future. It was a decade of transformation, from quiet coastal retreat to a city on the edge of modern growth. What was the population like in the 60s?
In 60, I believe it was 7,000. By 70, it was 28,500, and it hasn't quit. We still had farming here in the 60s, but that was phasing out as new developments, just like today, we're going to develop everything. New developments sprung up everywhere.
But so it was pretty much still a small place in the 60s.
Yes.
Why would people even come here?
Well, a couple of reasons she
Yeah.
mentioned.
FAU, IBM. It was a big draw.
How did IBM change the face of Boca?
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Well, they came to manufacture mainframe computers, bringing people here to do that. And then they allowed a small group of engineers get together and gave them 1 year to create a personal computer, which they did, and they launched that in 1981.
and that's
And that was the beginning of the personal computer.
the
in the
IBM
world.
PC. Yes,
IBM PC.
was right here. We have a gallery in our museum representing that era. It's very popular because almost everybody either worked for IBM or their next door neighbor worked for IBM or something back in the old days. And you know, that was world-changing things going on there. It's so impressive when you think about it.
And it all came out of this area.
Yes, amazing.
It is amazing.
Until the 60s, Boca Raton had few public services, no hospital, limited schools, and a volunteer fire department. As the population grew, so did the demand for infrastructure. In 1967, a major milestone arrived with the opening of Boca Raton Community Hospital, marking a new era in the city's development and self-sufficiency. And you suggest that there was no hospital here?
No, there was no hospital here until the 60s. And it was a tragic incident that caused the community to come together to create the hospital. And 2 children were poisoned accidentally, and they could not get to the hospital at Bethesda, I presume, and in time to be saved. And so it became a rallying cry for let's raise the money for a hospital. And they did.
You seem to like what's happened to Boca, but at the same time you worry that its history is going to disappear.
We don't want to lose our story. We don't want to lose what made us what we are today.
Right.
But we also, we're also in favor of new development. We're not against new development. We just need to save our story. We need to have something.
We can integrate
That's
history
right.
and historic buildings with new development.
Yeah.
We're not opposed. Yeah,
Right.
it can be done.
What role does the community play?
And we depend on the community to help us with this, to bring their stories and bring their artifacts to us.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't have
Because
anything
we wouldn't have
without
anything without them.
Right.
So the community is very instrumental and very much a partner in our history, collecting and sharing.
And I hear that there's a glorious website that you have. Talk to me.
We do.
bocahistory.org. There's a lot of historical content. So a lot of students contact me. I said, hey, just look here under research and so on. We have a newspaper archive online. I mean, there's fabulous material.
And we also have a new state-of-the-art history museum in the Old Town Hall building where we reside. It's called the Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum. It is beautiful, it's wonderful, very educational. We invite the entire community to come see it.